Good morning, church. It is good to be with you again this Thursday morning. As we continue through this Lenten journey together, we're actually down towards our last week here with this Sunday being Palm Sunday. And I thought about what it is that's been kind of a central theme for Lent. And as in much of our worship experiences, it really focuses primarily on God's grace and how God's grace is abundant. Extravagantly abundant in ways that it's hard for us to even comprehend. And a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the story of the prodigal sons and how the father gave them extravagant grace, and both of them had to find their way to the table again and reconcile to one another. And this last Sunday, we talked about Jesus going to dinner at Mary, Martha, and Lazarus' house, and how when they're there at this dinner, Mary anoints Jesus' feet with a costly perfume. And we read this story, and actually in each of the four Gospels, there's a story similar to this where someone breaks open a jar of perfume and anoints Jesus' feet or his head, and representing this, preparing Jesus for his burial. But I really like the John version of this because it names who it is. It's Mary, who's the Mary and Martha and Lazarus, friends of Jesus, people that have known Jesus for some period of time. We don't know exactly how long, but it says very clearly in the text that they were friends. And as we remember, that was Lazarus that Jesus had raised from the dead. So Mary and Martha had a very close and very profound reason to love Jesus. They knew that he was the Messiah. They knew he was the Son of God. They knew he was the Anointed One. And that's why when Mary gets at his feet and anoints his feet with his perfume, it emphasizes this humanness of Jesus, that Jesus was being prepared for his final days and his death on the cross. And that Mary knew this. Mary knew what she was doing. Mary knew that she was preparing him by pouring out this love back to Jesus, that they had experienced Jesus' love poured out to them. And so this is a very human and a very divine moment at the same time. It reminds us that Jesus is fully human as well as fully God, and that these friends of his were not just acquaintances or people that he taught, but they were people that he would call friends. In fact, we read that when Lazarus was dead in the tomb, that when Jesus saw the grief on the faces of the family and everyone that was involved, Jesus wept himself. And I love the humanness of Jesus as well, because I think that sometimes we can put Jesus on some sort of a pedestal out of sight or out of reach, and that he somehow doesn't have human emotions, and yet he did. He experienced so many human things, God incarnate. That's the beauty of the story of Jesus. Well, today I want to share with you a song that is basically retells this story, and it's written to go with the tune that we know of as "Oh Jesus, I Have Promised," or Angel's Story. And it was written by a lady named Carolyn Winfrey Gillette back in 2019. She's a contemporary composer and writes words for many different hymns, putting contemporary flair into it and contemporary wording, which probably makes it more accessible in some ways. And I love this song when I found it, but it's titled "The Lord Went to Dinner," and it's talking about Jesus going to dinner at Mary, Martha, and Lazarus' house. So let me sing this for you. The Lord went to dinner, and Mary took perfume as she anointed Jesus. The fragrance filled the room. She'd said as a disciple, she's been a faithful friend, and now with costly fragrance she honored Christ again. Soon Judas was complaining, this gift could have been sold. We could have helped the poor here, the young ones and the old. Yet Jesus said, my people will always help the poor. But Mary chose to give this to me, her dying Lord. Her gift was her expression of thankfulness gladness and praise. And so it makes us wonder in these long Lenten days, what would we give to Jesus if he sat at our meal? What gift would be our kindness, and what would it reveal? O Lord, today we offer the best that we can bring, our worship as a fragrance, our love an offering. And now as we're reminded the poor are with us still, we pray that we might serve them to honor you as well. Well, that's my hope for you and for me, that we find ways that we can pour out God's grace through us, that we can be the vessels that receive so much of God's love and grace and forgiveness and life, that we can then be bearers of that light and life to others, that others may know of God's love and his grace and acceptance, that we can be the ones that help them to see that God truly loves them. Go in peace and have a beautiful day.